Many of you have probably heard of this study that has come out suggesting that home gardening and urban agriculture is more carbon intensive than industrial agriculture. So burning a tree down like this can be considered carbon neutral. Now this is one of the biggest trees on my property. It's probably over 100 years old. Did you know it's considered to be carbon neutral to chop a tree down, such as this one, and burn it? Why? Because this tree throughout its lifetime has taken carbon from the atmosphere and pumped it into its body. And thus, when you burn it, all you're doing is releasing that carbon back into the atmosphere. So it's a net zero process with regards to carbon. The only carbon that is considered problematic to environmental scientists practically is the carbon that is released from fossil fuels, because it is said, of course, that the fossil fuels have been in the earth for millions of years, not in the active carbon cycle in the atmosphere and the plants and animals on the surface of the earth. And so this carbon is getting recycled unless it's fossil fuels. So if you're gardening and you're not using fossil fuels, materials that come from fossil fuels, of course, obviously plastics and petroleum-based chemicals of any sort, you're not using a lot of fuel for tractors and other equipment, then chances are your gardening is not going to be carbon positive, meaning a net gain of carbon or net input of carbon into the atmosphere. It's going to be, at worst, carbon neutral. Now, if you're practicing reasonably good soil management in which the carbon in the soil is increasing over time, then it is arguable that you are in fact carbon negative with your gardening practices, because that carbon that gets put into the soil can be stable for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And thus, when you take it from plant material and animal waste and you compost it and put it into the soil, and a fraction of that stays in the soil for hundreds of years, well, that's carbon negative. You're decreasing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere that can cause climate change, right? So, rest assured, all you got to do if you're a home gardener to not have this issue of carbon hang over your head is simply not use plastics, or very minimal use of plastics and fuels for large-scale machinery. That's it. It'll be pretty good to go at that point. And there may be a few other things that get added in there, like pressure-treated lumber, for instance. Well, there you go. So avoid that. No big deal.